Yo, what is going on, my dudes? Welcome to another RuneScape news coverage video. For this video, we're going to talk about the mutators for the melee abilities coming out next week, Monday, with Elite Dungeons 2. So without any further ado, let's jump right into the video. Let's go.
Cats is the illest. What you talking about, Willis?
Alright guys, this information is coming from the live stream today. They did show off a bunch of other stuff about Elite Dungeons 2, some of the rewards, etc. But I do want to just focus on, for now, the mutated abilities and exactly what they do, how they're going to work, so you're prepared for when they launch in a couple of days. You know exactly how they're going to work, the ins and outs of them, etc. So those abilities, if you do not know, just to keep you up to speed, is Fury, Flurry, and Barge. They'll each be called Mutated Fury, Mutated Flurry, and Mutated Barge, as you'd expect. So let's start looking at each one individually. First off, let's look at Mutated Fury. So essentially, they changed this from a channeled ability into a single hit ability. So now what'll work, you unleash your Fury instantly, you'll be dealing 157% weapon damage, and you'll increase the chance of your next hit to be a critical hit by 10%. So it's a little less than normal Fury because it's 15% if you let all Fury hits go off. However, most people don't. They cancel early, so they do get that 10%. So if you're somebody who cancels early, which is most people in the PVM scene, then it's not really much different. Instead, it just happens instantly instead of having to do the channeled hits and canceling early. On top of this, if it just so happens that Mutated Fury does crit on itself, then your next hit will be 100% chance to crit, making it pretty significantly more powerful than regular Fury. So just to recap, it hits instantly for 157% weapon damage, 10% crit. If it just so happens to crit itself, 100% chance to crit on your next hit. Moving on, we're going to take a look at Mutated Flurry. Before we actually get started on that, they've did a slight change to regular Flurry as well. The way it works currently in the game, if you miss a hit on Flurry, it basically just cancels or stops the Flurry ability. That will no longer be the case for both regular Flurry and Mutated Flurry. It will continue for the duration of the entire ability, even if you miss. So now let's talk about the Mutated Flurry and what has changed. So it says it'll perform a flurry of blows against your surrounding targets. It'll deal up to 94% weapon damage per hit over 3.6 seconds. One change is if you're only fighting one target, it will instead do 157% weapon damage instead of 94% on that single target per hit. On top of this, any attacks that happen to hit a target per swing will reduce the cooldown of Berserk by 1.2 seconds every swing. So I believe there's 4 hits in a regular Mutated Flurry. If you happen to hit all 4 hits, it looks like it'll reduce your cooldown for your Berserk by about 5 seconds, which is pretty significant. It'll get you right back into your Zerk far more quicker than previously. And it's also a nice little good damage buff that they made it so if you're doing single target combat, Flurry is not that bad of an ability with that increased 157% weapon damage. Finally, let's go ahead and talk about the change to Barge. This one is probably the most significant of them all. So basically it says here, shoulder barge your target, breaking free from binds and dealing up 125% weapon damage and binding your opponent for 6.6 seconds. Pretty standard as what regular barge does. However, now it'll deal up to 10% additional damage for every 0.6 seconds since you last hit your target, for a maximum of 225% weapon damage. So if you happen to be like running away from a target because you're dodging moves or whatever, every tick that you don't return a hit to your enemy, when you finally do Barge again, which is likely the move you want to do after a break like that, you're going to have significant increased weapon damage. Like I said, 225% damage, which looks like 10 ticks for the maximum allocated damage. On top of this, if it has been at least 3.6 seconds since you last hit your current target, then your next melee combo attack will be a damage over time instead. So that is your assault, destroy, flurry, etc. Those will then become a damage over time attack. However, they work very differently from your standard damage over time attacks, because the way damage over time attacks work, they apply to your target and will continue to do damage for their duration, which is why in a group scenario, 2 people can't apply the same bleed to a target because they can only hold one at a time and it's applied to the target as opposed to damage coming from the player. However, these abilities that get changed through Mutated Barge won't act like your traditional damage over time. They will still have their damage source coming from the player and not be applied to the target, meaning multiple people can do these damage over times and not cancel each other out. This also means, however, though, since it is continually coming from the player as opposed to attached to the target, they do have a chance to miss. Whereas in normal damage over time attacks, as long as the first hit lands, all subsequent hits will also land. That will not be the case with these. They do have a chance to miss in between. That being said, that is still a massive and very significant buff to Barge and Melee as a whole. So now you know exactly how it's going to work, and I'm sure a lot of you who are very PvM inclined are going to see how to utilize these to the best of their ability and get the most out of these abilities to really ramp up your Melee damage output. Really excited to see how people are going to take that and run with it. And that'll wrap it up for the video, guys. Let me know what you guys think about these changes. Are they significant enough to make Melee as powerful as you would like? Do let me know. If you enjoyed that video, hit that like button. If you're not subscribed yet, you want to stay up to date on all things RuneScape related, hit that subscribe button. Anyways, I appreciate you watching. I'm out. Peace.